The first thing people noticed wasn't the prison walls. It wasn't the guards. It wasn't the razor wire. It was the smell. Rich, buttery, warm. Like something drifting out of a five-star restaurant, not a maximum security prison. Inside a locked facility where men were supposed to be serving decades for fraud, corruption, and crimes that destroyed lives, someone was plating seared steak, butter-poached lobster, and truffle risotto. And it wasn't a rumor. It was happening. Right now. Hidden behind steel doors. Funded by money no one could trace. Controlled by inmates who weren't supposed to have power. And protected by people who were paid to stop it. But what no one realized was that these meals weren't just about luxury. They were part of something much darker. Something that would eventually expose a secret system of control, betrayal, and a crime that never made the headlines. Because inside this prison, food wasn't just food. It was power. And one man was about to find out exactly how far that power went. Before we step inside, if you're into real crime stories that feel too unbelievable to be fiction, hit subscribe now. Because this one only gets darker. The transport van rolled through the gates just after sunrise. Inside, Marcus Hale sat still, wrists cuffed, eyes forward. Former financial strategist. Convicted of orchestrating one of the most complex white-collar frauds in recent history. 10 years. That's what the judge gave him. 10 years in facility designed for nonviolent offenders. At least, that's what the paperwork said. But as the gates closed behind him, Marcus noticed something strange. There was no shouting, no chaos, no tension, just silence. Too clean, too controlled. A correctional officer opened the van door. "Welcome to Westridge Federal," he said flatly. Marcus stepped out, and that's when he smelled it. Garlic, butter, something roasting. He paused for a second, confused. Prisons weren't supposed to smell like this. Processing was quick, too quick. Within an hour, Marcus was already walking down a corridor lined with cells that looked different. No yelling inmates. No banging metal. Just quiet conversations. Low voices. Controlled movements. Almost civilized. His cellmate was already inside when he entered. A man in his late 50s. Clean. Composed. Reading a book like he had nowhere else to be. He didn't look up immediately. "New?" the man asked calmly. Marcus nodded. The man closed his book slowly. "Name's Victor." Marcus hesitated. "Marcus." Victor studied him for a moment, then smiled faintly. "You'll adjust," he said. "Everyone does, eventually." Marcus sat down, and then he noticed it. A tray sitting on the small metal table. But it wasn't prison food. Not even close. Grilled chicken. Steamed vegetables. Fresh bread. Actual bread. Not the processed, rubbery kind. Marcus frowned. "What is this?" he asked. Victor glanced at the tray. "Oh, that," he said casually. "Dinner." The cafeteria confirmed everything. Rows of inmates sat at tables, but there were no identical trays. Some had standard prison meals. Others didn't. One table in particular caught Marcus's attention. White plates, metal cutlery, real glasses, and food that looked like it belonged in a high-end restaurant. Seared steak, sauce drizzled with precision, garnishes placed carefully. Marcus stared. "That's not possible," he muttered. Victor, sitting beside him, didn't even look surprised. "It's not supposed to be," he said quietly. Marcus turned to him. "Then how?" Victor cut him off with a subtle glance around the room. "Rule number 1, he said under his breath. "Don't ask questions out loud." Marcus leaned closer, then explained it quietly. Victor took a slow bite of his food. Then he said something that made Marcus's stomach drop. "Everything in here has a price." Over the next few days, Marcus started noticing patterns. The men with better food had better everything, better cells, more freedom of movement, access to areas others didn't, and guards who seemed cooperative, not friendly, but flexible. These weren't violent criminals. They were CEOs, politicians, financial architects, men who had controlled millions, sometimes billions before landing here. And somehow, they still did. Victor explained it one night. "There are 3 types of inmates here," he said. "The ones who serve time, the ones who survive time, and the ones who control time. Marcus looked at him. And the food. Victor smiled faintly. That's how you tell the difference. It started with a favor, a small one. Marcus had skills, financial skills, and word travels fast in a place like this. A guard approached him during rec time. Someone wants to talk to you, he said. Marcus followed, not to an office, not to a meeting room, but to the kitchen. And that's when everything changed. Inside was not a prison kitchen. It was something else entirely. Clean stations, fresh ingredients, real knives, and a man standing at the center, plating something with surgical precision. He looked up slowly. Marcus Hale, he said. Not a question, a statement. Marcus froze. The man wiped his hands calmly. Name's Laurent. Marcus frowned. You're an inmate? Laurent smiled. Once, he said. Now, I'm something else. Laurent walked him through it. Not everything. Just enough. Food was currency. But not just any food. Luxury food. Exclusive food. Food that couldn't be traced and couldn't be explained. It came in through channels Marcus didn't fully understand yet, and it was distributed carefully. Strategically, the right meal to the right person at the right time. Why? Marcus asked. Laurent looked at him. Because hunger, he said, is the easiest way to control a man. Marcus shook his head. This isn't about hunger. Laurent stepped closer. No, he said quietly. It's about power. At first, Marcus thought it was just corruption, money moving behind the scenes, guards looking the other way, wealthy inmates buying comfort. But then, he noticed something that didn't make sense. Certain inmates ate well for weeks. Then suddenly, they didn't. Their food changed. Their behavior changed. And within days, they were gone, transferred. No explanation, no warning. Victor saw Marcus watching. You see it now, he said. Marcus nodded slowly. What happens to them? Victor didn't answer right away. Then he said something that shifted everything. They lose their seat at the table. Marcus frowned. That's it. Victor looked at him, dead serious. In here, he said, that's everything. If you're starting to see how deep this goes, drop a like right now, because what Marcus discovers next is where things stop being about food and start becoming something far more dangerous. A week later, Marcus received an invitation. Not official, not written, just a message passed quietly. Dinner, tonight. Victor looked at him when he heard. You don't say no, he said. Marcus swallowed. I wasn't planning to. The room wasn't part of the prison layout. At least not officially. Soft lighting. A long table. 5 men already seated. Laurent stood at the head. And the food was beyond anything Marcus had ever seen. Perfectly plated. Perfectly timed. Perfectly controlled. Marcus sat down slowly. One of the men smiled. Welcome, he said. You've been noticed. Marcus felt it immediately. This wasn't a meal. This was a test. Halfway through dinner, the conversation shifted from casual to calculated. Numbers were mentioned. Accounts. Transactions. Marcus's specialty. Laurent watched him closely. Tell me, he said, if money disappears in here, where does it go? Marcus hesitated, then answered carefully. It doesn't disappear, he said. It moves. Laurent smiled. Exactly. Then he leaned forward. And now, so will you. Marcus didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear, but because of the realization slowly tightening around his chest. He wasn't just witnessing something illegal. He was being pulled into it. The next morning, Laurent summoned him again. Same kitchen. Same calm precision. But this time, no introduction. No explanation. Just work. A tray was placed in front of Marcus. Not food. Documents. Numbers. Accounts. Transfers that didn't make sense at first glance. Laurent spoke without looking at him. Every plate that leaves his kitchen, he said, is tied to something. Marcus scanned the pages. Encrypted entries. Layered transactions. Shell movements that loop through multiple entities before landing somewhere untraceable. He looked up. This isn't just a prison operation. Laurent finally met his eyes. No, he said, it never was. Over the next few days, Marcus began to understand. The meals weren't just meals. They were signals. A steak meant approval. Fish meant delay. No dessert meant something was wrong. Very wrong. And the inmates who received them, they weren't just eating. They were communicating with people outside, with networks that still operated beyond the prison walls. Victor explained it late one evening. They took away phones, internet, contact. He leaned closer, so they built something better. Marcus frowned. Food! Victor nodded, something no one would suspect. Marcus sat back slowly. Until now, Victor didn't smile. That's the problem. It happened quietly, too quietly. An inmate named Reynolds, mid-40s, former hedge fund manager, one of the VIPs. He had been receiving high-level meals for weeks. Then one night, his tray changed. Plain food, no signals, no message. Marcus noticed immediately. So, did everyone else. Reynolds tried to act normal, but by morning, he was gone, transferred. No announcement, no explanation. Marcus confronted Laurent later that day. What happened to him? Laurent didn't even pause his work. He lost alignment. He said, that's not an answer. Laurent placed the dish down carefully. It's the only one you need. Marcus stepped closer. You're controlling who stays and who disappears. Laurent turned slowly. No, he said, they control that. Marcus frowned. Who? Laurent held his gaze. The one still eating. The deeper Marcus got, the more dangerous it felt. Not physically, psychologically. Everything was layered. Every conversation had meaning. Every meal had consequences. And every person was watching. Even Victor started keeping distance. You're moving too fast, he warned. Marcus shook his head. I didn't choose this. Victor's voice dropped. No one does. Marcus leaned in. Then how do you get out? Victor looked at him for a long moment, then said something that didn't feel like advice, but a warning. You don't. Laurent finally showed him. Not everything, just enough to pull him deeper. A small office, hidden behind the kitchen. A terminal, not connected to the prison system. Marcus froze. That's impossible. Laurent shrugged. Nothing is impossible with the right price. Marcus approached slowly. On the screen, transactions. Real time. Money moving through accounts Marcus recognized. Offshore routes. Corporate shells. Funds being redirected. Who's running this? Marcus asked. Laurent leaned against the wall. You are. Marcus turned sharply. No. Laurent smiled faintly. Not yet, he said. But you will. That night, Marcus was called back to the private dining room. Same table. Same men. But the tone had changed. More serious. More direct. One of them spoke first. You've seen enough. Marcus stayed silent. Another leaned forward. We need someone who understands movement. Marcus knew what they meant. Money. Control. Systems. Laurent placed a plate in front of him. Perfectly prepared. Untouched. This is your seat, he said. Marcus looked at it. Then at them. And if I say no? Silence. Then one of the men smiled. You won't. Marcus accepted. Not because he wanted to, but because he understood something now. This wasn't optional. Once you saw it, you were part of it. Days turned into weeks. Marcus began restructuring the system, making it cleaner, more efficient, harder to trace. The meals became more precise, more strategic, and the power inside the prison shifted. Inmates who once controlled everything started losing influence. Others rose, all based on the system Marcus refined. Victor watched it happen. You're changing things, he said quietly. Marcus didn't respond. You think you're in control, Victor added. Marcus finally looked at him. I know I am. Victor shook his head slowly. That's what they all think. This time, it hit closer. One of the men from the dinner table. Gone. Just like that. No warning. No explanation. Marcus confronted Laurent immediately. This wasn't part of the system. Loron didn't deny it. No, he said calmly. It was part of something else. Marcus stepped forward. You said the meals control everything. Loron met his gaze. They control what we see. Marcus froze. What does that mean? Lauren's voice dropped. It means we're not at the top. If you've made it this far, you already know this isn't just a prison story anymore. Subscribe now. Because the truth behind who's really controlling everything is about to change everything you think you know. Marcus started digging. Quietly, carefully, using the system he built, tracing patterns, following the money beyond the prison. And what he found didn't make sense. The funds weren't just moving between inmates. They were being redirected to people outside. Powerful people. Untouchable people. People who had never been inside these walls. Marcus confronted Loron one last time. You knew. Loron didn't deny it. I suspected. Marcus shook his head. No, this is bigger than a prison. Loron nodded slowly. It always was. Marcus went back to his cell that night. Victor was waiting, sitting calmly, like always. You figured it out, Victor said. Marcus stared at him. You knew too. Victor smiled faintly. I've been here longer than you. Marcus stepped closer. Then why didn't you stop it? Victor's expression didn't change. Because I built it. Marcus froze. The room felt smaller, colder. You what? Victor stood slowly. Years of calm suddenly felt like something else. Something calculated. Before you arrived, he said, this place was chaos. Marcus shook his head. So you created this? Victor nodded. A system of control, order, power. Marcus's voice dropped. And the people outside? Victor smiled. They were always part of it. Marcus backed away slightly. You used the prison. Victor corrected him. No, he said softly. I used everything. Marcus's mind raced. All the meals, all the signals, all the power shifts. It wasn't Loron. It wasn't the VIP inmates. It was Victor, the quiet man, the observer, the one no one questioned. You wanted me to find this, Marcus said slowly. Victor nodded. You were the missing piece. Marcus clenched his fists. Why? Victor stepped closer. Because every system, he said, needs someone new to make it stronger. Marcus looked at him. And now? Victor smiled. Now we see what you do with it. The next morning, the kitchen was running as usual. Meals being prepared. Signals being sent. Power being distributed. But something had changed. Marcus stood in front of the terminal, watching the system he helped build, and now understood completely. He could shut it down, expose everything, end it, or he could take control, become something bigger than any inmate, something untouchable. Loron watched from a distance. Victor waited, not interfering, not guiding, just observing. Marcus placed his hand on the keyboard, paused, and then he made a choice, but the screen cut to black before anyone could see what it was. Because inside Westport Federal, the most dangerous thing wasn't the prisoners. It wasn't the guards. It wasn't even the crimes that put them there. It was the system they built, where power was served on a plate. And the only question that mattered was, who was really being fed?